All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Maureen McDole. I'm the founder and executive director of Keep St. Pete Lit. We are a local literary arts organization in Pinellas County. So this is our first episode of Typewriter Talk. And the way this is going to work is we'll do an interview with a Pinellas County writer every other week. And then Chelsea Catherine here is my partner on this adventure. And she is going to be getting local writers to perform their work. So those will be on the opposite weeks. So if it all goes well, which it will, this will be a grand adventure for you to learn about our wonderful local literary talent. So Chelsea, hello.
Hi.
Hi, thank you so much for not only partnering with me on this. It was kind of your idea you reached out when this whole, I'm trying to find a better word than lockdown or COVID. This whole new adventure we're on sprouted into our lives and said, do you want to get some local writers to do readings? And then when Creative Pinellas reached out, this seemed like the perfect partnership to have both offerings. So, but how did we meet? Because you've taught with us at Keep St. Pete Lit. How did we meet?
I moved here probably it's going on 2 years now.
Yeah.
And I remember just Googling because I had been the secretary of the Key West Writers Guild and I wanted something similar. So I just Googled and I found you guys. And so there was, the Tampa Bay Times had their Festival of Reading. Mm-hmm. And that was the first time I met you. So you had like a stand there and I went over and was like, hi, you should let me teach. And you were like, okay. So that's
right.
Nice and easy. Yeah.
That's right. I remember. Yes, I remember.
Yep.
And you've been teaching, it's been about 2 years, right?
Almost 2 years, coming up on 2 years. Yep.
Yeah. And you're a fan favorite with our students. So, and you're going to be offering an online class with us or 2 or 3 or 12.
Hopefully, yeah, if I can get my life together for sure.
Yeah, well,
I miss everybody and I get emails sometimes from some of the students. And so I definitely want to get back into it because I miss everyone. So.
Yes, I do too. It's been this Thursday a month since it's wild. It would be this Saturday would be a month since we canceled classes at the Maureen Arts Center. So
yeah, it's time. I miss everyone too much.
Yeah. I mean, I'm excited, I'm excited for us to create an online platform but let's talk about you. So you have a book coming out in August, correct? From Red Hen Press. Mm-hmm. Red Hen. There we go. Yes. Yes. Tell us a little bit about it.
So, Red Hen, first of all, is it's a small press out of Los Angeles, and they do a lot of really good work. So I actually applied as part of one of their competitions and won through that because they don't have an agent. So they're really doing a lot for people like me who don't have agents, who maybe aren't as well known yet. They've really been supportive and I really, really have to just give them a shout out.
Yay.
So, yay, love them. So
presses. Yes, wonderful.
So the book, it seems so long ago now, but I wrote it it's going on like 3.5 years ago now when I was living in Vermont. And I set it in a fictional town in West Virginia. And it's about this brood of magic cicadas, which are the really big ones that only come out every 17 years. Mm-hmm. So they just descend upon this town and start wreaking havoc. They're destroying things and they're attacking people and everything's just crazy. And at the same time, the main character is kind of dealing with the second anniversary of her family's death. Her mother, father, and sister were killed in a car crash. So those two things are colliding at the same time. It's kind of just a mesh of terrible, stressful things.
Well, so what kind of themes are you drawn to? Because they say every writer kind of has specific themes I know I have specific themes that I revisit over and over again. And what kind of themes do you see kind of consistent in your work? Are you pretty all over the board? Are you trying to some writers are trying to work out a question or they had some trauma that they're trying to work out? What does that mean for you?
I definitely write about the same thing over and over and over again, and I feel bad for my readers, but I'm like, hey man, I gotta do what I gotta do. So
Yeah,
I
you.
definitely write a lot about loss and about growth. And the thing that struck me about this novel was when I had my first readers kind of reviewing it, a lot of them were saying, oh, it's so hopeful. It's just full of, the ending is full of hope. And I was like, oh, I didn't pick up on that. So it's kind of nice to have, it was me working through the loss of some things and moving away from people that I cared about, but then also to find hope at the ending, I guess, was what I wanted to do and what I did. So
And you sound like you were a little surprised, like your readers kind of enlightened you to something that you didn't even realize you were doing.
readers are always doing that. So the thing I found with readers is that they're always picking up stuff. They're like, okay, writing is like therapy. You know, you go to therapy and you're talking about something and your therapist is like, oh, picking up on this thread that you weren't even thinking about. And then it makes total sense. So when I talk with readers or people who read my stuff a lot, they are picking up on all of these things that I was not even aware I was disclosing. And
Mhm.
in that way, writing is like it makes you very vulnerable. It makes you
Yeah.
very, open to things. But I like that people are able to see different threads and things that maybe I wasn't aware of when I was writing it. So,
Yeah, because it's like you write it and then you put it out in the world, and then the process continues through the readers, and
hmm
they where you're giving them a gift. If you're lucky and you can have that kind of interaction with them, they give you a gift back
for
and
sure.
help you learn more about yourself as a writer.
For
That's
sure. I think too that readers also, everybody that's reading your book is bringing in their own history when they're reading things. And
Mhm.
so for me, not only has it been interesting to see like the truths that they've picked up about me, but also things that they've read into it that maybe I didn't feel like, oh, that wasn't, purposeful, or that wasn't, present. But because of what they've been through, they've read something into it that's helped them or that's resonated. And for me, that's just as interesting to see like all the ways people can interpret your work.
Yeah, that's the cool thing about not only being a writer but also being a reader, because people bring their own experiences to everything they read and every book they read,
hmm
and it really is like a magical collaboration that you don't really get anywhere else. I mean, I guess you get it a little bit with movies, and art also, but I mean, we really like go into books and we go into stories, and I mean, I think it's reading. There's nothing else like it. Like if you
Sure.
step away from it for a little while and then you go back to it, you're like, oh my god, like there's
Well,
nothing like
nobody, I think with like books especially, so with movies and television, there's one way that things are presented and it's very clear because it's basically the same for everyone. But with books, it's all in your imagination.
it.
So
Yeah,
everyone's bringing in all of their past history and all of, what they're used to and what is normal for them and reading it into your book. So it can come out, hundreds of different ways. And I just think that's really fun and interesting and sometimes challenging, but good.
so my next question is, what is your writing process? Do you have the plot in mind, or do you and plot it all out, or do you, some writers say they hear the characters, um, the words of the characters, and then they follow the story. Some are just along for the ride, some really like outline. What is your writing process?
So I've talked about this with the classes with Keep St. Pete Lit a lot. But I am not the type that really plans anything, which is weird because in my normal life I am type A and I plan everything months in advance and I everything has to be just so.
Mhm.
But with my writing, I definitely go into it and just I hear the voices of the characters,
Yeah, wow,
hear
I love
kind
that.
of like what's their pain or their problem or what are they dealing with, and I just ride it out.
Hmm.
So I'll start wherever I start and then I just kind of go. And for me, the majority of the plot work is done afterwards. So after I'm done, I'll go back and be like, okay, make sure you have like all the stuff in there that you need to have for it to make sense. But when I'm doing my first draft, I just go.
Yeah, I relate to that as a poet. I'm very type A and like running the organization, I would say. Like I create systems and I like things to be I'm not controlled, but an order to it, like very left brain. Like I get an idea and then I'm like, what's the system? But with the poetry, I really try to stay in that right brain space, except when it comes to editing, which is of course my least favorite part, but
Yep.
it's always interesting. Yeah. And how we wear different hats and different parts of our lives. And that's interesting. So what is your typical day as a writer? Because I mean, we can do, I mean, I don't know if you have a full-time job, I believe, right? So
Yeah.
it kind of changes things, but maybe like say, what's your typical day as a writer with your job and what would be your ideal day as a writer? Because I think it's important to know both. Yeah.
So I really actually love my full-time job and I do write for my full-time job. So I'm a grant writer. I do fundraising and communications. So it's all kind of writing focused and I really love the nonprofit that I work for. So I usually, I'll go there, I'll be there for probably 8 hours a day. It's a very supportive, sometimes stressful, but supportive environment. I'll come home and take a break, go for a run. And I spend the rest of my evening, if I don't have other consulting gigs I'm working on, I'll spend the rest of my evening 4 or 5 hours in front of the laptop.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean writing the whole time. I do a lot of like staring off into space and thinking about how, trying to get somewhere about it. But it's a good deal of looking at the laptop. And I've had this conversation with friends who have children, who have spouses, who are writers. In my case, writing, I'm very privileged because I don't have distractions, I guess. Like I don't have to be responsible for someone else. I'm only responsible for myself. And I can have that privilege of just sitting down in a quiet apartment by myself and working for 4 or 5 hours. And that's why I've been able to, it's a lot of time. And that's why I've been able to get so much work out in the past couple of years because I have that privilege. And so it's really for me just a routine and a practice that I try to stick to.
And it's discipline. Like, when I teach, I tell students like, your writing is a relationship. And it's like, if you're dating somebody and you don't show up for that person, are you really in a relationship? Like, no, you're not. You're just, hanging out. But if you really want to have a relationship with your writing practice, you have to be disciplined. You have to show up. You have to keep, as Julie Cameron says, artist dates and have a routine. I
think most of us feel it. I think most of us, when we don't do it, most writers, if we're not writing, more days than not, we feel it and it doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I just try to, like with everything else, follow my body and figure out, should I be writing right now? Should I be taking a break? What's my body and my brain needing to do?
So what are you working on right now?
Right now, this is a great story, actually. I'm glad you asked that question. So back in June and July, I started having I have night terrors and very vivid dreams. And so I started having these nightmares about an empty downtown St. Pete. So I had these nightmares that I'd be walking downtown near where I work and just nobody was there. Like I'd just be walking and I would
premonition.
Yeah, there would be no one.
Yeah.
And so it really I had them enough times and they freaked me out enough that I decided, well, I'm going to start writing about it because there's probably something there.
Yeah.
So I started this post-apocalyptic, book about 90% of the population. It's different than what's going on now, but 90% of the population has been killed off in a virus. This woman has survived. She goes to live on an island by herself so she can quarantine.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so that's what I've been writing since probably October or so.
Now you're living it a bit. I mean, Is it informing your writing? I mean, I don't mean to interrupt you, but my brain keeps immediately going like, is this informing your writing process? Kind of living it a bit?
It's so weird because it's hard for me to write that when that's kind of what's happening. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I just,
Distance.
it's weird. Yeah. And so I keep going at it, but it's, it's different in a way. And I think I'm so used to being by myself that for me, quarantine is like, I'm fine.
Mm-hmm.
But this woman's experience is different, and it's a different kind of book, and it's been fun to work through, you know, some of the feelings I'm feeling, but in a different setting and time and whatever.
So, God, that's fascinating because some writers, I mean, you do need a little bit of distance to kind of work through it and process it. So it's interesting so you're kind of, you could pretend that your life is carrying on as normal and you're not actually in quarantine because it's not so different in your normal life. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've been kind of pretending because I am in an extreme state of privilege right now. Someone asked me how I was doing. I go, you know what? Great. I'm going to say great because I have a roof over my head. I have plenty of food. My kid's good. Mm-hmm. I'm still getting paid. My organization is moving online seamlessly. Like, you know, there's still some bumps, definitely, but like, yeah, that's interesting. Wow. So this is all your fault? No, I'm kidding.
I was like, so
you
I'm
created this world. You created this world. You're the omnipotent one. You're the Oz of COVID. I'm just kidding.
So it just, yeah, it freaks me out too. But yeah, so anyway, that's what I'm working on, and we'll see. You know, I told my friends, I was like, so either this is never going to go anywhere, or people are going to be like, oh, wow, you know, it's going to be really relevant. Either or, we'll see what happens.
But it's good, though, that you're kind of just still chasing it. Like you're still chasing the tail of the dragon. You're not allowing the rational side going, oh, I don't know. You're not thinking about how the readers or the public will respond. You're just like, I'm going to keep on this. I'm going to keep writing. I'm going to allow the story to come. That's brilliant because some people could be frozen.
I don't know if that's brilliant. I would say that one of the things that has kept me writing, when I think all writers know that a huge part of being a writer is rejection and is, you know, bad feedback and feedback you don't like. And I've been doing this for 20 years. Like I've always been a writer. And the thing that has saved me as a writer has been, I don't think about feedback when I'm writing at all. Like I don't read my first book. I don't read any of the reviews. I don't, you know, the book is out there. It's not perfect, but I can't change it now. And I have to write for me in a lot of ways. And so I really, maybe I should think about the reader more often, but it's kept me practicing and it's kept me in love with writing for 20 years. Whereas if I did think about the reader more, I think it would be a lot more stressful.
Yeah. So if you do get blocked, because we all get blocked, like, what do you do to get unblocked? What is, you know, your process with that?
So I've definitely been blocked 2 or 3 times before. And there was one time right before I started writing this book, it's coming out, where I said, I quit writing. I'm done. This is not doing anything for me. I'm over it. Yeah. And it took, you know, 2 or 3 months away. And then I came back to it. And that's been throughout my life. Whenever I've gotten blocked, I've just taken the time and allowed myself, without beating myself up, to just be like, hey, you need a break. You know, 4 to 5 hours a day, every day for your whole life is not sustainable. And it's okay to take breaks and to focus elsewhere and to focus on yourself on those times. So that's my advice to other people. If you're having a block, it usually means you're tired. You need a break.
Burned out.
Break. Yeah.
So where do you go for inspiration? Like what inspires you? Like, what inspires you? What gets you, you know?
Well, I'd like to say that women inspire me. They do. Women are a huge source of inspiration. I just think women are amazing and I love them, and they always inspire a lot of my work, but also settings. Another thing that really is big for me is where I live, where I'm visiting. those settings will really heavily influence the work I'm doing and the themes that are coming out in that work.
Okay, so going out in nature, do you mean like having an adventure, like traveling, or actually like visualizing different settings?
Usually it has to be traveling there or living somewhere. So
Oh, interesting. So
the
you like
setting,
move to get out.
exactly. So my first book was very heavily set in like the Keysy environment, which is where I was living. I was living in the Keys
Yeah.
when I wrote that book. And the West Virginia book actually really mirrors my time in Vermont. You wouldn't think of those things mirroring each other, but there are a lot of similarities in a lot of ways. So yeah, just like where I'm living and the kind of natural environment of where I am is really influential.
Interesting. Um, so are you feeling pulled to move somewhere else? I mean, of course, that's the next question. Like, you know, are you liking Florida? Because, now you're going to have two books kind of set in our awesome, crazy ass state.
Yeah, as somebody who's a native Vermonter and a Yankee, I love it here. I really like St. Petersburg in particular. I struggled a lot in the Keys and it was not a good fit for me, even though I loved it there. I like it here. And so hopefully my thing is whenever this stuff that's going on with the world is able to peter out, if I can have the privilege to travel again, that'll help keep me going. And I think, as you grow older, even if you stay in the same environment, it inspires you in a different way.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. Like you could be anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
You build up a certain amount of experiences, and I just went to Paris in October, and it reminded me a lot of St. Pete. I mean, we have the beaches and they have the landmarks, but it's still like that, just that vibe. And I kind of like was like, I have a lot of this already where I'm from. It was really inspiring to like go. That's what's so cool about travel, if you're privileged enough to do it, so we do talk a lot about privilege a lot, even doing this is privilege. We have internet. So a couple more questions. Let's see. What would you say to yourself as a first-time writer? Like you're just starting out, and now that you have 20 years under your belt, what advice would you give yourself?
I would give myself that advice of not blocking out negative feedback completely, because I think some feedback can be constructive and helpful, but really just having a firm belief in yourself as a writer.
Yeah.
And to not let rejections, I mean, if you looked in my submittable, hundreds of rejections, hundreds. I would tell myself back then, like, it's worth it and you can learn. You just have to stick it out and you have to really believe in your own worth as a writer.
That's good. And if you were not a writer and you could be anything else, what would you be?
This is all I've wanted to be since I was 8.
Yeah.
I mean, I would I don't know. Anything. I would be like a movie director if I could be a famous movie director. I like bossing people around and kind of doing that. I think I would do that. But also, I really love what I do with my full-time job.
Yeah.
I love working, weirdly enough, in development for nonprofits, because I believe in their mission and I've always worked with nonprofits. So I would do that and I'd be happy to do that.
So you're pretty good.
I feel okay, yeah, for the most part.
So when you were 8, you said you've known since you were 8. Like what was it? Like what was the spark? Did you need to tell a story? Did you hear the characters? Yeah.
It was, I grew up an only child and I was home alone all the time because my parents worked a lot. And so writing was the only thing that calmed me or that like kind of made me feel good. So if
Comfort.
I was by myself, I could just turn on the TV and it would be noise, and then I would just write, and I would be
Yeah.
totally lost in that world, and it just was very calming for me, and it just that was my place of everything's okay right now, and it still is. So
Good. I totally relate to that. That's like my comfort, my happy place. Like if I go
mhm,
too long, it's like I start to dry out like a mermaid. Like I don't have water, and I can't, I don't have a reference point of who I am.
mhm,
And I get, because I think a lot of creative people, were so sensitive. We just take in the outside world. And if we don't have time to go inward and be creative, we lose, I personally just lose myself. It's like a GPS. So just even journal writing, I'll just sit and write in my journal, and it's like, I know, it's like, oh, that's who you are. Even though here I am 45 and I've been the same, I should know who I am, but you get lost. So I totally get that. So what are you reading right now? What writers or books that you love that you want to give a shout out to?
I'm like looking where what's her name? So I just read Lydia Yakovlev's new book, and I'm blanking on the name, but it's a collection of short stories, and you can get it at Tombolo Books because
Mhm.
that's where I got it from. But it's really good. I love her. She's a fantastic writer, and everything she writes just seems to resonate with me. And then I also, if you need something to read for free and you have internet, I would suggest going to Catapult and signing up for Memoir Monday. They're
Oh.
nonfiction stories,
Mhm.
but they're edited by Lily Danziger, and they're like 5 or 6 per email that she'll shoot out, and they're the best of the net for that week. And that has been really inspiring for me, and it's helped to just kind of distill, a group of good choices to read from. So I would suggest that for people who want to stay home but don't want to spend a ton of money but still want to read.
Okay. So we're going to end with one last question. What would you say is the number one piece of writing advice you would give to other writers? Kind of like your Bible verse of,
Well,
whatever verse.
it's okay, I'm gonna try to work through what I want to say. Andre Dubut was one of my professors a long time ago, and he said that something along the lines to me of when you're writing things that are your best writing, you'll feel it because it will fall into place. And so what I would want to say to writers is to write the deepest part of you and not what you think other people want to read.
Hmm.
So if you're writing something that makes you happy, makes you feel good, even if it's not what you think other people will like, or if you think it's going to get bad feedback, write it anyway, because
Mhm.
that's usually the best writing you're going to do.
I love that. Thank you. You've inspired me. So I just want to say thank you again, Chelsea, for being here. And thank you to Creative Pinellas for giving this opportunity for Typewriter Talk. I like that name, Typewriter
I
Talk.
like it too. Yeah.
And go to keepstpeatlit.org. You can learn about a lot of our events that we have going on. We're pretty much all online at this point. And then Chelsea will be having a class soon with us online. And then she also offers classes in person when we go back into the real world. Or maybe this is the real world, right? If we could go, I don't know, right? And tune in next week for more Typewriter Talk through Creative Pinellas' website. And thank you so much for tuning in. And thank you, Chelsea. All right.
Bye.
Bye. Oh, wait, I'm sorry.